All right. So this is going to be my first actual video of a topic. So I actually have a YouTube video in front of me and with the camera on top of the screen so I can stay on topic. And it's regarding Lex, what's his last name? Friedman, right? Fridman, Lex Fridman. He does podcasts, like 2-3 hours long, right, with people. And this particular one is with a lady who wrote a book. Her name is Annie Jacobson. And she talks, they have a conversation. He asks questions and she answers questions. And it's regarding her new book out regarding nuclear war and, how it would play out if we had a nuclear war. And this is just my opinion and my commentary basically on that interview. From a 59-year-old man point of view, lived in the US his whole life, and I have seen since the early 1970s the changes in perspective and focus and the technology since the early 1970s. And so a lot has changed in our focus. I'm sure the technology has changed as well, but I think mainly our focus has changed. Where we used to be very concerned when I was a kid, people had actual fallout shelters, and we had fallout drills in public schools. It was an actual Cold War going on between two superpowers, and it was the USSR and the United States. And we were both building hydrogen bombs as fast as possible. Okay. It was insane. And we were like, what the heck is going on with these insane people? Because we had no control over this. We couldn't vote them to stop. These were political leaders where, you vote for one of two people. And you only have two choices. So you don't really even get to vote. The parties pick who they want, and then you have to pick from their choices, right? So that in itself is unfair and a totally different 2-hour topic. So, but that was the way we felt back in the early 1970s, and I'm sure the late 1960s as well, possibly the 1950s. I was born in the middle 1960s, so I don't remember things before like 1971. At least not regarding culture and society and stuff. And I learned a lot of stuff on television. I was watching the news on TV. When I was a kid, I was watching Richard Nixon talk about stuff. And I could see that, we had this Vietnam War, we had this Cold War going on, and I learned about nuclear weapons, because it was a hot topic. We were talking about it like on a daily basis. What is going on with these nuclear weapons, and when are they going to stop, and when are they going to drop the big one, right? Who am I going to die? And so it was very much on everyone's conscious mind, not just adults, kids too, because we were doing the drills at school, right? It's like, what the heck is going on? Very dangerous world, very dangerous adults doing crazy stuff, and there's nothing we could do about it as kids. So as time went on, they stopped building so much, and we finally got a good, smart president, Ronald Reagan, and that was in 1980, where he actually negotiated agreements and treaties where instead of, building more nuclear weapons, we actually agreed to stop building, number one, and to actually dismantle or decrease the number of nuclear weapons on both sides. We basically said, hey, we have fairly the same amount of nuclear weapons. I got a zillion over here and you got a zillion over there. Well, how about we, dismantle like 100 of them on each side? Okay. That's 100 less nuclear bombs times 2 that will go off if we have a complete Holocaust. And we have so many weapons that we could destroy the earth like 20 times over. So, how about we ratchet down the crazy, right? So we had the SALT 2. We had SALT, SALT, Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty. That's what that stood for. Then we had SALT 2, which, was the next one. And those were agreements to limit and reduce nuclear weapons. This was in the 1980s. And so we were feeling good about it, right? It's like, ah, good. We're reducing these weapons. Everything's above board. We're all being honest with each other. And our presidents, the Russian side and the US side, were actually working together to reduce nuclear weapons. So we felt good about it. So we were, having fun with video games and going to the malls because we felt safe because our leaders were doing the right thing. Fast forward, you get other presidents and the whole nuclear question kind of fades out of view. It's like we don't even talk about it anymore. We assume that nobody's doing anything with nuclear weapons and they're reducing them still, and eventually they'll just go away entirely. But it goes out of our conscious minds. Okay, so fast forward to like a couple of years ago when Russia, well, in like 1989, 1990, the USSR dismantled itself. It might even be before then. It was with Gorbachev, where the USSR dissolved its control over its states and allowed these regions to become independent, like I think Georgia and Ukraine, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, other ones as well, all became independent states. They were allowed to vote for their independence. They became independent. So then you just had the Russian Federation, and then you had all these other countries. Eastern Europe is what we would call that now. So Putin, Vladimir Putin, who's the president of Russia, he saw all that happen, right? He was there. He was one of the lieutenants at the time when Gorbachev let all these states become independent. And Putin, he was more of the hardline from the earlier USSR days, and he did not like that. And so after Gorbachev was gone, they went through like 3 or 4 really old generals or politicians, and they died like within 1 or 2 years, just too darn old or drunk or whatever. And then Putin came in, and he was like in his early mid 40s, right? So pretty young. And he didn't do anything at the time for a long time. He as far as expansion, he didn't do anything. He just laid low, and he was happy staying president. But probably 10 years ago, he invaded Bosnia, or might have even been part of Ukraine, but it was on the eastern side, right? And I think that was during Obama days, or might have even been Bush. I can't remember exactly which president was president at the time. But that's when the first little thing happened. And then a couple years ago with Biden, like as soon as he became president, within 6 months or so, or it might have been a full year, Putin just straight up invades Ukraine. Just throws up his army there and just marches in and says, hey, we're going to take Ukraine. Get out of the way. And then it's like Ukraine certainly, pushed back. But then somehow the United States decided that, oh, Ukraine's our country. And so we'll just throw in our own United States weapons as if we own Ukraine. And so that's when everybody was thinking, what the heck is going on? At first we were thinking, hey, let's help Ukraine, because we're good people and we want to help people that are being clobbered by a giant country like Russia, right? But then we notice, wait a minute, these are billions and billions of dollars, and when does it end? We were thinking, give them a few $1 billion, bunch of weapons, and then they drive Russia back, and then that's the end, right? Ukraine wins, and Russia loses, and that's the end of the war. That's what we were kind of assuming, right? But then we realize, no, it's one of those continual things where Russia will just keep on coming forever, and the U.S. will just keep on shoveling our tax money to Ukraine forever. And then suddenly we're like, wait a minute, something wrong here. Something doesn't add up. This should have ended, and it's not ending. So we don't want to do any more money for Ukraine. And so after that, you started getting threats from Vladimir Putin, right, within the last year or so, with the really super fast missiles, the hyperspeed missiles where they go like Mach 8 or something. and he's talking about, dropping nuclear weapons. And that's when people start going like, what the heck is going on? You got the Russian president talking about nuclear weapons, right? And of course, the U.S. wants to downplay that for good reason. Like, hey, let's not talk about nuclear weapons, okay? Now, my own personal opinion is Putin is just bluffing. He tends to rattle his saber, so to speak, and tries to scare the U.S. and back them off by threatening nuclear war. That's a pretty dangerous bluff, though, and he knows it. He knows what he's going to do. He probably knows he would never use nuclear weapons, but he wants to use that threat and that fear to leverage his, he wants to win that war, that Ukraine war, right? And he wants to back the U.S. off by threatening nuclear weapons. And he's hoping that he can scare the U.S. government and the U.S. people. And this little video here with Lex Friedman and this lady's book, part of its purpose is to scare the American people so that, hey, we don't really want to be part of this Ukraine war. And so now there's two reasons. One is legitimate, where tons of money is going into that, and hey, this is not our country. So what is the deal? Let Europe take care of that. Let Ukraine take care of that issue. It's not a U.S. issue. And so that's a perfectly normal, rational, well-grounded reasoning. Now, the fear of nuclear war rationale does not make sense, because we, in the early mid 1980s, we realized any scenario. There was this movie called War Games, and the computer did all these simulations of Russia starting the war, the U.S. starting the war, some other country starting a nuclear war, and every time it ended up with all the countries getting blasted and nobody being able to stop anybody else's bombs. So you just had all the big cities blown to pieces by hydrogen bombs, which are, like hundreds of times bigger and worse than the nuclear bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So we're just like totally destroying the entire city for 100 miles radius for each city, for each freaking city. Okay. And then you have these MIRV missiles, which is multiple MIRV, multiple independent reentry vehicle. So that means one missile goes up, and then like 30 or 40 different missiles with different trajectories go down to each city, like 3 or 4 missiles with with hydrogen bombs on each one to, all the cities that are within its reach. It's like 4 or 5 cities per missile, or per missile that goes up, and then 5 nuclear bombs or hydrogen bombs per city to rain down hell, right? And so, of course, we're going to be afraid of that. And so now, this book, this interview, Vladimir Putin, they're all trying to scare the American public by threatening nuclear war. The only thing is, if Russia ever did do that to the U.S., they know that Russia would be blown into, a hole, a giant hole. All of Russia would be blown to smithereens with hydrogen bombs. The U.S. would totally annihilate every city in Russia. It wouldn't matter if they were military facilities or not. There's so many hydrogen bombs and missiles that every city, they have plenty of missiles to go around to every Russian city and totally obliterate everyone. So there's no way on earth Vladimir Putin would actually, hit the big button and launch nuclear missiles against all the U.S. There's no way they would do that. So what he could do and might do, and what is more likely, would be, more of a tactical nuclear weapon, if necessary, where it's local. It's pointed at a nuclear or at a military installation, and it's only within, a mile. So it's a small nuclear weapon. They call that tactical because it's pointed at a specific location and it's used as part of a battle or a war. So it's not part of this whole Armageddon scenario. And so that's the whole thing. We really don't want any country to think it's okay to use any size nuclear weapon, right? Because it's an escalating effect. If it's okay to use a small one, well, use a little bigger, and then a little bigger, and then a little bigger, and then a little bigger, right? And then now we're using hydrogen bombs. And so we don't want that to escalate into total insanity, because it's one of those things where it's a domino effect. And so we want to have a healthy fear of nuclear war, so that not only the US, but Russians as well understand, like the new generation especially, understand the danger and the reason why we need to be afraid of nuclear war. But at the same time, we need to understand that it's mutually assured destruction. That's what MAD is. MAD, capital MAD, mutually assured destruction. That means that if we launch, Russia will launch, and nobody will be able to stop all those nuclear weapons that leave Russia and come to the US. Same way if the US launches all its nuclear weapons to Russia, Russia will launch all their stuff. And the thing is, the other side will be able to launch their response before any of the first strike hits. Okay. And so that's why it's called mutually assured destruction, because there's no way to stop the other side from responding en masse. So why would you even, why would you initiate that? It's self-destruction. It's actually, it's suicide against your own country. So it would be madness, which is why they call it, MAD, MAD, mutually assured destruction. So it has two meanings. And nobody wants to be mutually destroyed, right? So anyway, that's kind of what the purpose of the whole book is about. I encourage you to buy Annie's book and to read it, and so that you can understand, what could happen if we actually went down that road, and to understand why it's so incredibly, insanely dangerous. And if any of you ever go into politics, or go into the military, or go into writing or journalism, anything that affects public policy, we need younger people, say age 40 and younger, to continue SALT type agreements, strategic arm limitations, nuclear arms limitations, where countries all agree, to limit or to stop or to even reduce their nuclear weapons, starting with the countries with ridiculously huge numbers, such as the US and Russia, possibly China, I don't know. But the problem is getting that cooperation. And as long as we are at a hot war, which is what we're at with Ukraine and Russia, there really isn't going to be any kind of honest negotiations. These nuclear weapons are going to be used as leverage, or as threats against each other. So anyway, that's all I have. I've been on for about 18 minutes, so not as long as I thought, actually. This Lex Friedman video, this is 3 hours long. I don't know how they do it. But this is fine with me. 18, 20 minutes, that's plenty of time for a monologue. And I'll be talking about other topics as well, I'm sure. I am educated. I have 2 college degrees, one in secondary education for high school type, junior high to high school. And the other degree is in sociology. So social psychology, child psychology, all the sociologies. I took every sociology class in college that I could find. And I love the topic. And I'd love to work for an organization that researches social psychology, sociology. But typically what you're going to do is write a book, right? Books are boring, at least to me. So I think I'm just going to do the video thing so that you can hear my perspective if you want to hear it. And I will skip the book writing. And I know it makes money and stuff, but I'm not thrilled about doing things for the purpose of making an income. It just seems to dirty the whole thing, So while I understand that we need money, we need to pay the bills, I also know that if I don't have to, I'm not going to. I want to keep it clean, honest, and specific to what I want to talk about, with no catches, no exceptions, no politicians pulling me, no sponsors, no advertisers, or anything like that. This is not monetized in any way. It's going to get like 3 views, so it's fine. I just want to put this out there so I can get used to doing it. And hopefully I can, maybe do this more often, because I don't have a steady job right now. And so I have plenty of time, and I think I should use some of my experience being alive and some of my perspective based on my own personal experience. I was in the military, graduated from college, had a wife, and I have grown kids. So I have lots of life experience, right? And so I'm just one perspective. And so as you talk to other people, just remember that your opinion is also your perspective. Don't think you're a know-it-all. Don't tell other people they're wrong. Just speak from your own perspective, and make sure you stay within the scope of knowing that this is just your opinion. Everybody else has the right to their opinion as well. So don't try to turn it into an argument as to who's right or wrong. Okay. Try to keep your self-esteem out of it, right? Just see it as your perspective as you are right now, and your perspective will change tomorrow. Your perspective will be different. Okay. Just know that. As we experience life and grow in age and experience and wisdom, our perspective changes, and that's fine. Doesn't mean we were wrong before. Doesn't mean we're right now. Just totally throw out the whole right and wrong kind of thing. Okay, don't be in a competitive kind of mentality. Try to avoid that and totally just get rid of that whole competitive kind of attitude. Instead, just feel like you're a part of a large community of people, everyone with a perspective and opinion, and we're just learning from each other's perspectives. Okay. You can learn from my perspective, and if you put videos out, I can look at yours and watch yours and learn from your perspective. And we just learn from each other. It's not a competition. We're not trying to win prizes or anything. We're just trying to understand things from different points of view. Hope that helps. All right, I'm done here. So I'm going to hit end stream and end.